Welcome to Step 5 of our professional genealogy methodology series. I've covered the research cycle, research questions, planning, and analysis. Now we're going to arrive at what I believe is both the culmination and also the most overlooked or underappreciated aspect of professional work, getting in writing. People will often complain that reports take too long to write or they don't want to read them, so I've even heard some people say, why should you waste time writing something that I don't want to read? Like, okay. Writing is that final analytical act. It's where the proof is born. I have to keep saying, the genealogy standard, proof doesn't exist until it's in writing. This is it. Reports aren't just simply me giving you a travel log or a summary of what we found, although that's a useful delivery mechanism of conveying that information. There's a lot to writing reports that's valuable and important and critical that nobody should bully you into saying is a waste of time and skipping it because you think it's efficient, and just being okay with just turning in some family group sheets or an updated tree and saying that's good enough. I did professional genealogy. No. So why write? Why bother writing up anything at all? And as I've mentioned, and I guess I was getting ahead of myself here, genealogy proof does not exist until it's in writing. This is a genealogical standard. You know, it's very, I can't argue with that. You may have all this analysis in your head. You may be able to explain it. You might know who it is and be able to say you're confident that you've identified the right person. I have to put it on a pedigree chart, family group, put somebody's ancestry in with the family. But you know, without a paper that's cited, with the evidence analysis and a coherent argument, it's not proof. It's just opinion. It's like, great, this is what you thought, but nobody has any way of being able to see what you saw. They're going to have to look at everything themselves and come up with their own conclusions. Some people might think that's great. I want people should be able to look at all the stuff I looked at and come to the same conclusion. It's not always that simple. You'd be surprised how much knowledge is running around in your head that it's not common knowledge, that without you would not be able to draw the same conclusion. So here's what I call a confessional question. If you think about your family tree, you think I had to think about this with my own tree that I've accepted and I'm comfortable saying is fact. How many of those generations do I have written proof statements or an argument for every generation, every relationship within those family groups? So is it technically proven? Unfortunately, I guess this is one of those situations where I spend so much time working on other people's trees that I haven't documented mine to the point that I feel that I should. I mean, I've done a lot of learning over the years, so working on other clients' trees. So I probably could do better on my own tree, to tell you the truth. Giving my own tree the same treatment I would give a client's tree is something that I could do. Even myself could do better. So the research has been done. The evidence does exist, and I've been able to prove it to my satisfaction. But will somebody just be able to read and understand where all that evidence is from? They might see all the sources, but they might not know which sources contribute to my argument, or which ones are center stage, crown jewel, and critical for understanding, and why. Because some people generate a lot of records, but only a handful of those records answer particular research questions and establish intergenerational links. So there's always value in writing things up. Even if you're the only one that's ever going to read them, it's still valuable because it forces you to examine every piece yourself and acknowledge where there's gaps that you might not have realized, and go back and try to fix and fill those out so that you're satisfied with yourself, and that this makes you a better researcher. That's the point of writing, is that it helps you think about your research in a much more critical way than if it's just running around wild in your head. So writing makes it visible. Can't hide for gaps when it's on your paper. So it's all too easy to gloss over things that you're not sure about, or things you're not aware of in your head, because you want things to make sense. You might say, this looks like it's fine. These family groups do make sense. Like, so and so belongs into so and so. I've accepted this as his baptism. It's like, so you can say that John Smith of Essex County was the son of William Smith because, when that's your evidence that gives you the rationale, you have to be able to complete that sentence with evidence and argument and rationale. Why that John Smith is not the son of anybody else, why that particular William Smith is the only William Smith that it could be. That, anyways, there's all sorts of things. It's a discipline that separates you from going to saying, I think I know, that's an amateur, to I can demonstrate this conclusively with proof and evidence. So, reports anatomy. So there are some, let's see, there are some elements to reports that I believe are essential, that I've been taught in practice. So I'll just give you a quick walkthrough. So you have your research questions, you restate your research question, because everything that you're doing is going to build off of that. You don't want to start by reminding that reader what you're trying to answer. And this also keeps you really focused too, as well. And then you have background. You want to explain everything you already knew. It's the context, it's your before picture. Then your evidence presentation. You typically want an evidence first presentation where you're compiling the evidence before, in a logical fashion, before the reader. It's not a travelogue of how you found it. It's how it all connects together and makes logical sense. And then you have a summary of results. And that's what you explain, what you've accomplished, so that it's quick and easy to somebody to see what is that you did. Really important when you're a professional, but also if you find yourself having to go through a lot of reports, past reports, to see what you did. It's a quick index of figuring out, when did you accomplish something, when did you do this, when did you discover something. It just makes it quick. Granted, AI now makes this really simple. You can just put it in Google Drive and whatnot, and you can have Claude or ChatGPT figure it out, find it real quick for you. But the days before that was critical. It can still be, because AI gets things wrong too. Then conclusions with appropriate qualifiers. You shouldn't overclaim or anything. You should use language like the evidence suggests, the preponderance of evidence indicates or would suggest. That's kind of the preponderance of evidence. It's kind of a lower tier. It comes from the legal world, but it's kind of lower tier. But it's important to know when the evidence is suggesting something versus it's being very, very clear, explicit, making sure you delineate. And then you make recommendations for future research. This is a great place. Anyways, I probably shouldn't. What's the next logical steps you can take in the future? Good for your future memory. So you want to follow up on this later. You can. You'll have a easy, digested list of stuff to do next, of how you could follow up on this problem. In the professional world, this is really important when you have a company and a client is served by more than one researcher, you just hand the report over, and the researcher really quickly gets the lowdown of what happened and what to do next. So, the background. So, it isn't just throat clearing, it does serve a real function. You you explain what you knew from the start, because if you didn't know it before, everything you found is going to be significant after. If you didn't know anything before the 1900 census, but it says what it said, say you have the person's from Ireland, and you're able to get him back to Ireland and find his family in the Irish records. That's really significant because you started with almost nothing. You had one census record or so, and it was the U.S. side. So that background made discoveries meaningful by contrast. It's also a great place to put family lore and store what was believed to be known, any other documents you have, etc. And also any historical insights that you have at the beginning that might play a factor that you're suspecting might be that you're taking into account going into the session. Right. So again, evidence first, not a travel log. We don't want to say, first I searched this, then I searched that. I didn't find anything here, then I went checked this place, and then I went there. It's boring. Nobody wants to hear that because it's about you. You shouldn't be in the report. You shouldn't even be giving opinions. At least you're saying or rejecting yourself by saying the researcher believes or the researcher found. Don't ever say that. You're supposed to. It's just about be what the records say. You don't matter. Although your brain and how you're interpreting it matters. You're telling that. That's where you fits in. Is that those insights you're putting in, but you have to do so indirectly. So it's chronology without purpose. So there's evidence first. You talk about blocks of evidence connecting together, how they form the identity, how you're distinguishing one person with the same name from another person living in the same place at the same time that you could confuse your John Smith with, or you did confuse it with, but being very careful not to go travel loggy on that one. Acknowledging that they exist is different. So yeah. So anyways, this isn't boring discussing those other candidates. It's demonstrating rigor, particularly if those other candidates could have easily been countered. If you encountered them, that's important to know. There was other people with that same name, very similar identity profiles that I found and had to separate from my John Smith. So I knew that I was working with the right leads. And that also could be why this took a while, because I had to separate a bunch of people with the same name. So that's kind of a justification. So yeah, that's my, for client projects, you have to justify your time. So sometimes you have to do some process documentation. It serves a different purpose than aimless, travel logging. You're trying to head off in advance while making sure you don't spend too much time doing this to avoid accusations that you wasted time. That you found, say you found the record quickly, those key records quickly, but you didn't know if they were for your person or for somebody else with the same name, or there was an indexed record that should have pulled up automatically, but there was a transcription error, or the search algorithms were just being, non-helpful in bringing up your search up as a top search result when it was a dead ringer hit to what you put in. It should have popped up. It didn't. It happens. Computers, programs do this. Sometimes you don't see the relevance of a collection or a particular result that you saw earlier in your search until it was approached from a certain angle. You didn't know about why individual or why fact until you found or did X. That sequence of discovery mattered because it explained how you knew to look for someone somewhere, and that was the person you were looking for, not just somebody with the same name. This is also important when it's like a jurisdiction you're not familiar with, like somebody shows up in a record set that's different than shows up like in a different region or parish, and you're not sure if it's just a different person. It could be a person, it could be a contemporary, the same name living in a different place. You didn't know, but later on, you discovered that that was a one-off appearance, and there's no evidence of another person showing up with that. So that record then becomes relevant and arguable to be your person, and thus worth digging into. There's accidental finds. There's a lot of serendipity and luck that ends up happening, for better, even with the most careful planning. Um, that just things just fall into place. You stumbled upon it, and it's just a lucky find. But that lucky find happened because you did systemic searching, looking for something else, and it so happened that you found what you were looking for in a way that you would have never found otherwise. So I guess in that case, it's not what I did today. It's not what I did today. That's why that path was necessary to get the results. And that was your discovery in practice. So, anyways, that's kind of one of those things with client reports. It's like they might not like reading that, but for me, I have to justify that. I feel it's my professional duty. If they don't care about that and they don't want to hear about it, fine, don't write about it. But I'm going to put that in if I feel it's relevant. Like if I would have if that accidental thing would have happened really early in my session, I wouldn't have had to spend a lot of hours digging in other collections, and we could have gotten more done or covered more ground on a different subject that we were also wanting to focus on. I feel it's my duty to explain that. So, client expectations. So basically, result summaries are sales opportunities. Now, if you're not doing this professionally, this might not be important to you. But result summaries are not just passive recaps of my book. They're the opportunities to demonstrate your value and to sell a future engagement, another project. So that's why it's important to have a mindset shift. I can't talk today. Uh, because you show what you provide the value you brought to the project, and what questions you can now are now answered because of what you did, and what next phases look like, and how you can do them. And it just makes it easy to say, just continue doing that. I like your recommendations. Go ahead and do that. Simple, easy. If they don't have a lot of time to review it, because there's some very busy executive types that don't have time to read your whole report, they appreciate what you did, because sometimes they do have time to read and they appreciate that. They appreciate the details, but they're like, I'm glad you gave me what I needed to know to make a quick decision. It makes it easier for you or another researcher if somebody else decides to follow up. It's decided that somebody else follows up on it, that they can just pick it up and go. I've mentioned that before. So, citations as analysis. Citations are a topic that many people have talked about, but I like to go and reframe it a bit. Citations aren't just bibliography, they're part of the analysis process itself. I don't believe I've talked about it as much as I should, so I'm taking the opportunity now to do so. So first off, citations are an art, not a science. And this is Tom Jones. That's his exact words. Doesn't mean there's no single correct way to cite any particular source. Now, there's style guides and ways where they say that's how you do it. But what matters is that your citation accomplishes purpose. And whether you're following Elizabeth Mills or following another style guide, you have to remember that the goal of a citation is to identify your source clearly, to the point that it will allow somebody to easily find the artifact that you are drawing evidence from. That's the whole goal. The rest of it is stylistic preference and philosophy, and then there's a lot of argument there that can be that's many argument that's been started over citations crafting. So first, there's there's some core principles distilled from Elizabeth Mills, Evidence Explained, Tom Jones. So basically, first thing is consistency. Just pick a style, stick with it. One of the biggest things a professional looks to see if it's a professional report, particularly if they're reviewing the work of a person who's hoping to be a professional to get credentialed. So I don't look at their citations. It's one of the top things I look at. Do they follow the same standard, same style for every record type that they cite? Generally, that's the rule of thumb. Every record type you should be citing it the same. I don't care too much about the formatting as long as it makes sense and it's logical and consistent. There's sufficient detail. Can I find the source from your citation? If the link breaks, is there enough information there for me to help to retrieve it again? That's why just saying ancestry.com database link. Well, if the link breaks, I might have to go to find the database again and pull it up. But I guess I can't complain as long as I know what the subject matter was. I guess it should be able to stand out by itself as to what it is. It shouldn't require the context of what it was what it was being cited for in the report. It should be clear what was cited. And that's why you should really craft while you view the source. That's why you shouldn't do it later. You should do it now. Why? Because it does. First off, there's things that say there's some sources that you can't go back to later. Like if you're an on-site repository, you're not going to be able to look at that book again. So you need to copy the details there because you might not have access to the artifact again to extract those details later. Now this is easy with online sources, but you know how often online sources go offline or disappear without notice? It's crazy. And it'll happen when you least expect it. Also citing forces you to understand provenance, particularly with layer citations, where you're quoting each layer down to the original. Because particularly with online sources, the active site makes you think about where the record came from, who created it, when, how it's organized, who has the record still. Makes you think of those kind of details in a way that I don't think you usually get, or you might not get just quickly copying and pasting some information real quick that you found that's just easy, low-hanging fruit. Hyperlink and typing with the information you want to extract from it and calling it good. So it allows you to acknowledge derivatives as derivatives. It allows you to know that if you're citing a citation, an index, it gives you the opportunity to say so. You shouldn't ever pretend or borrow sources, pretending you saw the original. It's like, hey, this index or transcription citing the original, so I'll just cite the original because it looks impressive that I looked at the original source. No, you didn't. You didn't look at that. You know for sure it said that. It might be be put together by a really good, reputable person, but there could still be errors. Everybody makes mistakes in transcription. So not everybody includes all the details either. So there might be some additional information in the original that didn't get copied either. So that's that. So yeah, so as I mentioned, crafting while viewing. So when you look at the source, you got all the details in front of you. You get your microfilm numbers, page numbers, volume designations. Like with microfilm in particular, there's usually like a little title card, and even if it's digitized, the practice of looking for that card, pulling it up, making sure you copy pertinent information out is really important. Making sure that you are aware of the book that comes out of, because sometimes you might just find an indexed result, you might find the page for it, but you don't consider with the volume or the other information about the volume. You might say, I found a court record, but do you know what volume it was in, what book it was in? Because what if you had to go find the original book? Or sometimes you might be exploring the collection from, it might be an alternate copy of it, but you'd have to know the volume numbers and whatnot to find it again. So it's important to make sure you have that. So anyways, archives might not be accessible again. Microfilms you might not be able to access it outside of a particular area. Citing it later is a promise you're going to break. You're going to lose details. And even if it's easy to pull later, you're going to lose time trying to relocate information you so-called saved by skipping that step. Because you either do it now or you do it later. And if you do it later, you might have a big pile of stuff to work through. And that's going to prevent you from finishing on time. And yeah, you might be tempted to make shortcuts. So that's just, it takes discipline to do. Am I perfect at this? No, but it's the ideal that everybody should strive for. This is what I've learned from the Salt Lake Institute Genealogy courses and research like a pro methodology series, lectures and courses I've attended. Now, citations also reveal the quality of your source as well, because it forces you to think about who created the record. Was it a government official, church pastor, family member? Who was the author? Who was the creator? Was it created same day, years after? Is this original or a copy, derivative? It's authored. What's the chain of custody for this thing? Who had it before? Is there any bias that might affect the content? Because if you think about who created it, you might think about what they may or may not choose to include or why, what things they would choose to emphasize versus what they wouldn't care about. Because things like provenance affects reliability. If you know where it's been, it's been in a government safe in government possession, it's been less likely to be tampered with. Derivatives compound errors. Sometimes originals don't exist, but it's important to know that you are dealing with a copy versus the original. If you find something weird and out of place, like when you compare it to other records, anyways, creator's perspective shapes that they record, how they record things, and their circumstances. So thinking about that allows you a chance to stop and pause. So here's my thing with URL handling, and I know this is controversial, but in my opinion, I believe in pasting the full URL string. Let's see, that can include, sometimes that includes the stuff after the question mark, because there's a lot of places where it says website, artifact, and then there's like a question mark, and then you could trim everything after that and it would still load. But sometimes there's like context about the search that I really want to capture that might not be convenient or easy for me. Now, technically, there's a spot in my research calendar capturing all those details, but do I always consistently include every little nuance of that search? No. And if that string of stuff contains those kind of details, it might be my immediate best interest to include that. Also for future reference, if things break, because sometimes those URLs will have information about the volumes and the page numbers and the image numbers too. So that's my opinion. You should always try to test them before you rely on them. Some sites will break if you remove too much, so make sure it still loads properly. So, anyways, even the link breaks, people can still eventually find it. Um, and my opinion, it allows you to very quickly get to the original when you're on the first generation of people reviewing it yourself, a client, a colleague. It might break in like a year, a couple years down the road. But at that point, we kind of understand it was a website cited a couple years ago. The internet changes all the time. But when we immediately were accessing it and reviewing it, it made it really simple to quickly see the original and just get right to it and see it for ourselves. All right, publishing and sharing. So let's talk about sharing your work. You might feel scary or premature to do so. Like you're not sure if you've quite reached the answer or you're ready to share what you think you found, but really it's quite important. So I hate to be morbid here, but your research will die with you unless you put it somewhere others people can find it. Um, it's not why you want, and having it in written form is really important. If it's all up in here, it's definitely going to die with you. You can't answer questions after you're dead. Let's see. So sharing matters. It's not about your ego or getting credit. It's allowing the it's a collective enterprise of genealogy. We're all working for understanding the human past. Your contributions matter, and it prevents other people from having to redo your efforts. If they can find it, they don't have to they don't have to rediscover what you found. And if it's quality, it's carefully constructed and acceptable, they can move on to other challenges, or they can focus on gaps that they see but they can spend their time focusing on those gaps, and they should acknowledge you in the future. It's like this other researcher made this contribution. I discovered this gap, and what their reasoning was for what the information that they had seemed reasonable. I found evidence that overturned their conclusion, but here's why what they brought to the table was valuable, and it saved me a lot of time and allowed me to reach a better conclusion. So, anyways, now sharing helps you identify other people. Other people sharing allows you to find them, and vice versa. Peer review, although uncomfortable, because sometimes they'll tell you stuff. A good friend will tell you the stuff that you don't want to hear about yourself in your work. They'll let you know about blind spots, stuff that you personally overlook, and they know you. If you have a good group, they might know where your weak spots are normally, and be extra mindful of that stuff, and give you pointers on where to improve. So sharing preserves it for future generations, and yeah, I think I've said everything at this point that I was planning to share for this slide. So sharing options. What do you have? What can you do? There's formal publications, um, and then there's practical sharing, personal ways. There's societies and people with journals and newsletters and quarterlies, um, various levels, local, state, national. It's really great if you can publish into those. Um, your research involves a particular county. That county genealogy study might be very interested in what you have to say and what you found about a family. Um, they can add to their files. But the national ones, they have very, very high standards. If you can get into them, usually most people have to end up doing a lot of training and practically will end up like getting their, uh, might be board certified because they've had to prepare a portfolio. And by the time a portfolio gets accepted, they're pretty much already, just spitting distance away from meeting the standards of the NGSQ, and in the American Genealogist tag as publications. They're just blind, double peer reviewed. It's brutal. Whatever gets in there though is usually very good and reliable, and so they have reputations. And it doesn't pay very much if you're professionally, so it's more like a prestige thing. It's like to say that you've gotten in. So anyways, but there's other things locally you can share your own blog, a blog article, post your reports and findings on the related people's memories and sources page. You can share it with online family wikis, and also local societies generally are happy just to take copies of what you have. Maybe they might be able to go over it, offer tips and pointers, and maybe polish it up, help you polish it off, so that it's something presentable and won't embarrass you, because good people don't want you to be embarrassed with something that you wouldn't want to have your name on, or have some obvious typos or things like that. So I like a workflow shortcut. Sometimes I have to go and update clients' trees, and sometimes I wish I could like add in all these sources individually, give them their own treatment. That'd be nice. But oftentimes it's just almost an afterthought. By the time, but clients' budgets aren't unlimited. I spent almost all the budget on the research and the report, so I just basically put the report and research calendar and image copies of documents if possible. Usually that makes the file too big, so it's just the report and research calendar. I attach them as a source to relevant people, add them as a memory so it can't be deleted by another person, and add quick notes about which kind of citations are applicable. This is a shortcut option. I really don't. It's if you have time to do it properly, like i.e. one source at a time, that's the best, particularly things like family search. But if you're in a hurry, this at least gets somebody there. They can dig if they want to and find the relevant sources, and they get to read the research at the same time. So there's some ethical boundaries with client work of what you can. Most sharings, like you have to remember that work product belongs. You know, it's their family. They paid for it, and you shouldn't share it without their permission. That'd be an ethical violation. Now, I do personally retain the copyrights because I don't want them just to be able to modify my work without my permission. But so I do. So yeah. So anyways, many clients want their work to be distributed and shared, put on trees, so that their research dollars can benefit other people. I love people who are selfless like that. Now that people have the right to privacy, they don't want to share. That's fine. I don't share their work unless they consent. But I strongly advise it, because if you've gone through the trouble of hiring a professional, you've sunken down, or you've taken hours and hours to do it, you might as well share your efforts. And that's something I usually make sure I have explained up front, that we are agreeant upon before beginning. It's usually part of my engagement conversation. You're supposed to make it a part of your engagement conversation. This is right from the APG, the Association for Professional Genealogists Code of Ethics. So, productivity and sustainability. This is a technique, Pomodoro. I really suck at pronouncing that. It's a technique. The fundamental idea is that it's supposed to give you periods of work, forced breaks that might seem counterintuitive, but the idea is to help you avoid rabbit holes and diminishing returns. And oftentimes, there's so many times the best ideas, which here's the real reason why you do it. Next slide. The best conclusions come when you're not grinding. Taking breaks allows you fresh perspectives and pattern recognition. How many times have you gone grinding down something, taking a break, and you stop and go, hey, like I think I'm wasting my time here because I've already noticed there's this consistent pattern and I need to modify what I'm doing. Because insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I need to change my approach here. And then that in turn could be beneficial and unlocking some productivity and getting results by trying something a different way if you haven't been able to get results. Now there's due diligence and following through with plans, but sometimes you need to allow yourself to stop to think. Sometimes quiet time is good time. So sometimes it helps by just taking a meal break, walking, getting up off your computer, getting away from your research, walking, getting a drink of water, going to the bathroom, whatever. Something kind of magical happens more times than not. There's your brain's subconsciously, even though you are doing something else, your brain's working through it and it's processing in the background. Patterns start to emerge unconsciously that might work their way into your conscience as a thought. So, and you might, yeah, it gives you time to reflect and think, was this actually helping? Sometimes there's an error like, oh my gosh, I was looking for this person. I accidentally messed it up in my brain. I was looking for somebody with this description. Turns out I just conflated it with another person I was looking for. So no wonder why I wasn't finding them in this record set because I was looking for the wrong person. And then you go back and you're like, oh, I found the right person. It's really embarrassing when that happens. I don't bill when that occurs. But if you don't take regular breaks, you can go longer, go through whole books looking for the wrong person. Or you're looking for a blend of two people, two distinct individuals, and it's no wonder you're not finding what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that never existed. Um, and set a timer, be disciplined, listen to the timer, back away, even if you think you're on a hot streak. Easier said than done, but if you can do it, it's really valuable. So there's the professional mindset, the importance of organizing, because you have to organize, have a filing system, or even because you're right, your genealogical research that's not organized is waiting just to be lost, and you have to repeat it. Future you is counting on you to take the time to make things repeatable and findable again. So back to the professional mindset. So there's some thoughts, some mindset insights that I might expand upon in a future series. So credentials represent baseline competency, not expertise, per se, although there's something that was impressed upon me when I became accredited with ICAP Gen. Getting a credential doesn't mean you know everything. It means that you've demonstrated a baseline competency in methodology, particularly ICAP Gen in a particular area. It's professional standards. Now, BCGs, certified genealogists, they demonstrate standards. They might have a region regions they're good at, but that's the thing. They've certified that they can do methodology that applies everywhere. That they can follow standards. So even the most credentialed genealogists are constantly learning. That's the point. Nobody knows everything. So anyways, a professional will always admit uncertainty. It's okay to say they don't know because that's essential and academically honest, intellectually honest. That when they find something unfamiliar, they go seek learning, they talk to colleagues, they look it up, they ask they go seek out expertise, expand their groups. They continue to educate themselves. And they keep in mind that every project can teach you something new, and every record type you haven't used that you've heard about before that appears relevant is a learning opportunity. You shouldn't be afraid. They shouldn't be afraid of that, and that there's always a possibility to learn, and it's the natural part of the cycle. So it's important to write as you research, because you're capturing your analysis as you're logging results. You're constructing your tables and your transcriptions while viewing the source. You do this because it makes the report writing quicker. It allows you, because you already have most of it written. By the time it's time to write the report, you have all the materials necessary to draft it quickly. If it isn't already basically drafted. So basically, I work with source materials on one monitor, the report document on another monitor, and it seamlessly flows. So this is something that Diana Elders of Family Locket does, and she's taught. There's an episode of a podcast, episode 49, Research Like a Pro, Writing as You Research. It's a good listen. I suggest. She has a lot of very valuable material. It's a lot of her podcasts are free to listen to. She has tons of stuff on her website that largely covers everything that she would cover in her classes. Her classes are very structured and organized, so you can follow along. But a lot of her materials she ends up mentioning in all these different podcast episodes and posts on her website. So some key takeaways. Proof requires written conclusions. It's not optional for it to be proof. Group sheets and pedigree charts aren't proof, even if they're really well cited. They don't capture the thinking part of the glue of what held it all together. Citations are more just documentation exercises. They're analysis opportunities. They make you think, so you should do them. You should share your work, including future you. Writing helps future you, because eventually you're going to forget about what you did, because we're busy people, we have busy lives, lots of things going on. We don't remember all the nuances of one session to the next, particularly if we've had to put something down for a number of years and then return to it. There's also a lot of reasons. Sometimes we might just be working naturally through our trees, our interests shift, we go a different direction, and then we decide to revisit it years later. So right as you go, not after. You should integrate the drafting process throughout your research. Remember, a professional is a continuous learner. Credentials are the beginning. They show that they've achieved a certain acceptable level in the eyes of that credentialing body or organization. But that doesn't mean they know everything, and it's the end of their journey. All right. So here's some further learning. Read the ECGs, the Board for the Certification of Genealogists, Genealogy Standards. It's a really important book. Evidence explained by Elizabeth Shaw Mills. It's often referred to as the Citation Bible. Her website also has a website where she answers a lot of questions people have. And occasionally there's been multiple editions of her book that have come out over the years, because a lot of people ask questions. They encounter records that they're not sure how to cite with those guidelines. And she puts in her 2 cents, and eventually there's enough of them that she feels compelled to put together another book. There's Mastering Genealogical Proof. It's a really good explanation of the genealogical proof standard and evidence. There's Research Like the Pro, which I highly endorse. It's well worth the money, in my opinion, to go take her class. She does more than just simply information. She gives you a lot of feedback, and she puts you in peer groups, and you work together to. And if you get as much as you put into it, and if you give it your all, you'll learn a lot, and you'll grow and develop. And that's the point. There's other groups. There's ancestry study groups, and there's all sorts of places. I'm also drawing off of NGSQ submission guidelines that tells you what you want to do if you want to publish formally. They have a lot of rules. Um, they have to because they have to keep they have to follow they have a style that they need to keep. They also don't they have to print, so they only have so much space on the pages. So you have to do things a certain way to make them fit. So some of them kind of make me sad. You're having to truncate source citations, but I get it when you have limited space. And there's also, the Family Research Wiki, which is a gold mine for background knowledge. It's a first stop in my opinion. All right, questions. If you have any questions, I'm thanking you. Thank you so much for your attention. And remember, the work isn't done until it's written down. Well, is it ever really done? But at least you can't say that you're done for now until you've written it down.